Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about the Yamaha NS-10M Studio. These are legendary speakers, and I've been fortunate enough to have a colleague that owned the pair for more than 20 years, I guess. So I had to bring them into the studio, keep them for a while, work on them, really trying to understand why the NS-10s are so iconic. The Yamaha NS-10 speakers are passive, so they need an amp. I have the NS-10s paired with an Alesis amp, and from my understanding, this is a well-known pair, the Alesis amp with the NS-10s. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the sound. The sound, if we are taking like a modern approach, is shit. Because it's really mid-range forward, the bass is lacking. I think the roll-off on the NS-10 starts at 80 Hz, so you are not hearing a lot of important stuff that's going down in the low range. Also, the top end, it's nothing spectacular. It's there, but it's kind of dull, in my opinion. Now, the NS-10s are famous for their mid-range, and I have to admit that the mid-range is something special. It took a couple of days to get used to the mid-range, but once you get a hang of how the mid-range reacts, you can really understand why this speaker is so loved. You have punch, you have transient response, you have everything you need to make critical decisions for the mid-range. The upper mid-range is a bit boosted, so it can be a bit harsh if you push the speakers hard, but if you are listening to the speakers quiet, if you have the tendency to mix at a lower level, these are just superb. And for listening to music, they are something else, especially at lower levels. I love how they sound at lower levels. When pushed, the sound is just horrible in my opinion. If you push them, the sound falls apart. I don't know if it's the amp or the speaker itself, but something bad happens when I try and push the speakers. I don't get that consistent mid-range, I don't get that sound integrity. It's something that I dislike. With that in mind, I've used the NS-10s at lower levels. I've used them for referencing only, so I didn't stay too much on their sound because I just can't get used to the huge lack of bass and how the top end is dull. When working on the big speakers, now on the 3010s from Eves and previously on the ATC's 25s, working a couple of hours on the big speakers and then switch to the NS-10s, you get a different perspective. I don't know if in the past people were exclusively mixing on NS-10s. I think that's crazy, but I don't think it's that far-fetched, because once you get used to a sound from a certain speaker, you can make that speaker translate in any scenario. I've mixed on the big speakers, switched to the NS-10s, and I was able to focus on the important things in the mix: the vocals, the punch of the kick, the punch of the snare, the levels of the vocals with the drums, especially on modern trap stuff, mid-range heavy material. So it was a nice refreshing perspective when used as the secondary pair of speakers. I just couldn't use them as the mains. I don't know why, but it's either I didn't spend enough time with them to get accustomed to their sound and to listen to the mix in other contexts just to understand how they translate, or it's just how I perceive the NS-10s. But for me, NS-10s as main speakers is, like I said, crazy. As a secondary pair where you just want to take the mid information and listen to the compression and listen to the balance, listen to how everything gels together in a mix. I think they are perfect for that type of job. From what I've talked with my colleague George, the speakers are almost in the original condition. Just one tweeter I think was changed at some point. Other than that, everything is intact as original, and I think it's a statement on how good the speakers are. Even after a couple of decades, they show signs of wearing out, but the sound is still there. That speaks a lot for the build quality that the speakers had. I don't think that something made today will have the longevity of an NS-10. Maybe the top-end stuff like the ATCs, PSIs, that shows that things were a bit different in the past. Getting back to the sound quality of the NS-10s, I think they are superb speakers for the mid-range. The most important part of a song, the vocals, the snare, the lead instruments, and I understand why they were so popular back in the days, where we didn't have that drive for bass-heavy music. Things were more focused on the mid-range, and that's where the NS-10s shine. Do I recommend them? If you have the budget and the space, yeah. It's a cool little piece of history that you can have in your studio. For me, today is the day when I will send them back to Georgia. It was a nice experiment, but I don't feel that they made a big impact on my workflow or on the sound I was able to produce. The mid-range on the ATCs was much better than the mid-range on the Yamaha NS-10s. The mid-range on Eves are better. So for me personally, I don't think that I am missing something out by letting the NS-10s go. My plan is to add a smaller pair of speakers to complement the Eves, and I don't think that the NS-10s are that type of speaker. It's not versatile enough for me. I actually enjoy listening to music on the NS-10s, but it's not worth it for me in the end. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for the support and see you guys really soon. Cheers.
Just accept it's my life now. I believe truth has a lot more value than any status, still the better living without you.